Billiken fans, welcome back. It's Peter Hale and Zach Miller. This is the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you so much for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the bell down below to get notified whenever a new episode drops. Speaking of episodes, this episode and the whole season of this podcast here, the Midtown Madness, is brought to you by Two Men in a Garden. Whether you like it mild or hot, chunky or cantina style, the people over at Two Men have you covered. I know what you're asking, Zach. Why Two Men in a Garden? They are a 100% St. Louis company. Not only are they local, but they've opened up their production facility to local food entrepreneurs. They love St. Louis the way I do. You can pick up their many products at any local grocery stores or online at twomeninthegarden.com. Follow them on social media as well at Two Men Salsa. Pete, how are we doing? We got a bit of a reprieve from our dense early A10 schedule.
We do. It's a 1-game week. I feel like it's been a long time since we've had one of these, Zach. It's been a lot of twofers lately. Very not just dense schedule, but dense notes for our show every week. So it is kind of nice to only have to talk about one game, and we can get into the weeds on some other stuff instead.
Yeah, I realized that like when we do have a short week or like a small script, I guess you want to say, I end up trying to find other things to put in there, and then I go way overboard and just totally muck up the entire thing with just like random ideas. And we've got a couple of them. We may get to all of them. We may save one for another episode. Depends on how we get along here. First, need to give a shout out to longtime friend and listener, also former Chaffetz section mate, Chris Geldmacher. Helped me out this past week or two. Chris, great Billiken fan. He's also an attorney here in St. Louis. If you're ever in the need for a great attorney and a great guy, Chris has got a call. No, I didn't do anything illegal, by the way, just for the record there. Pete, do we? Maybe let's talk about the baseball thread real quick before we get into basketball, because I think it's important to kind of go over that. I really, I've been meaning to do it, and when I put out that thing about the soccer stadium, I got a little flack, and I understand that because it is kind of tone deaf when baseball is really in need of something. And I'm talking about putting another thing on the soccer field.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make your point any less true, like
Right.
the soccer complex would feel a lot nicer if they did have something sort of visually to break it up on the end there. But yeah, it does remind us that baseball's really, really behind the times, behind their peers when it comes to facilities. And I thought you did a great job on this thread. I was a couple days late on getting to it, and really eye-opening. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I thought you did a great job putting a lot of visual aids in there to kind of see what our peers are doing, and then kind of brought it all together. Why don't you take us through kind of what inspired it, what went into it, and how'd you go about drawing some attention to the baseball facilities here?
So I really wanted to include what spurred it on originally. It's probably 7 years in the making. Obviously, this whole, I want to call it a crusade, I guess, to improve the fan facilities and also the media facilities at the Billiken baseball stadium and the softball stadium. But obviously softball stadium, it can get there in a lot less money. It's a lot smaller. But it was when SLU baseball hosted the A10 championship, and they put up this like shoddy, like scaffolded press box with like a table, like a picnic table in it. I don't know, but you have to have a press box to host the tournament. And SLU doesn't have one. And it occurred to me that these are not like extras. They're basic things that this stadium doesn't have.
Right.
So I was curious. I wanted to know how many teams, because the goal is always to make the NCAA tournament at our level anyway. And I wondered how many teams made last year's NCAA tournament and didn't have a press box. I also wanted to get into the seat issue because I think, on a cold early spring day, it keeps people away, having to go sit out on bleachers. So I first I went through the A10 and I was like, okay, let's look at the A10. And a lot of them don't have good pictures from the outfield. So there was one or two that were either a no or for press box was either a no or didn't know. And then the same with the NCAA. There was two, and one of them I guess doesn't exist anymore. The field for I forget what is it? Long Island University.
LIU Brooklyn. Yeah, that really weird one.
Yeah. So, but it, I just kind of was going through, I would go in and I went and looked at the bracket, took the names off the bracket, went to their website. I tried to get, if I could find out, especially for the ones that would be in our range, how much they were paid. So you looked at like Linden or who is it? Put up 10,000 and 5,000 was Granderson, UIC, I think. It was UIC. Yeah. So what spurred it on though, like in the immediate was that obviously I had put it off for a long time. And finally Laura Weber, I believe, is who, kind of rightfully so called me out. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll put it out. I'll put out this thread. And I just did it over that entire day, kind of a little bit in the morning, a little bit during the day. And then when I got home, in the evening, I finished it off. But yeah, I really was appreciative of the responses, especially, alumni reaching out. We had a couple recent alumni. There, I can get into it probably a little bit later. Stuff they said, it's not necessarily groundbreaking stuff they said. I mean, and again, this isn't coming from a place of like attacking the athletic department and it's just like, these are basic things that if you want to attain your goal of getting the NCAA tournament, this is bare bones. Like this is 101. And I'd really like to see a team that has outperformed essentially the expectation in the NCAA of, you have all the facilities necessary. And they still go to the tournament. What, 3 times in 15 years? They're non-ticketed. They get no revenue at all. They're like, that takes non-revenue to the extreme. So, I mean, look, Hendo's done an amazing job. I think, obviously it starts with a donor. We got to find a donor out there. There's got to be somebody out there that is willing to put up 10 million. That's not, I mean, obviously I don't work in fundraising. I've never worked in fundraising, but 10 million can't be hard, right? Wait, can you find a business?
Well, I hate to rely on just a single donor, right? Yeah. I mean, look at the Champions Center. That was 20 donors who all put up the same amount to get it done. It's if you're, now you're trying to do the same thing for half that. Maybe it's not the exact same pool of donors, but certainly you could look at how that got done and try and figure it out for baseball and softball.
How much was the Champions Center? Because I got a question for you.
Wasn't that 20
million?
Yeah.
So here's my question for you. If they put out to a vote, if they said, okay, Billiken fans and athletic department, and they said, you can either have the Champions Center or we can add the sufficient items to the baseball stadium and the softball stadium and bring field hockey and tennis back to campus, which would you pick? Which do you think would better serve the university long-term?
Wow. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that with the Champions Center, you're serving all sports, right? And that you are, doing more for the higher profile sports that can really raise the profile of the athletic program. But man, I don't know. That's a really tough question. I mean, what's your response to that?
I think if you say the Champions Center or I think you go with the thing that can elevate the programs that aren't at the appropriate level financially funded. I think,
Right.
I think, I think it's it's kind of, again, it's brutal to bring players, athletes in here and not give them the basic tools to succeed.
Right.
So that's my opinion and I'm sticking to it. Let us know, leave a comment down below or wherever, tweet at us, whatever. Let us know what your opinion is on it. Cause obviously I think I honestly think it's a great, would you rather. It's interesting. So, yeah, that's about it on baseball. And I'll get probably into kind of just the response from a lot of different people later on. Pete, a lot to get into basketball wise. We've got the guy from Connor Bailey from the Black and Gold Fan Pod coming up to preview Friday 10. But first, Pete, Billikens come away with a 74-70 win at Davidson on Friday, January 27th. The first win in the history of the Billiken program at Belk Arena.
Curses aren't real, Zach, right? I mean, curses aren't real. The official men's basketball Instagram account called it a curse. I think there's something to it if they're acknowledging it. Look, I'm not a superstitious person. I'm not a spiritual whatever. I don't believe in curses either, but I think it is pretty interesting that they actually acknowledge the existence of it, or at least the fact that enough fans believe in this thing that we're just doomed to never win at Belk Arena.
And it was kind of fitting how this game went in a lot of ways. Ironic. It started out ironic, and then it continued fitting, and then it ended appropriately, I thought. So the Billikens start 8 of 8 from the field in this one. They didn't miss until Parker rimmed out on his second 3 attempt in a row.
Yeah.
At the 12:51 mark. Of course, you had Terrence Hargrove fouled and missed, but that doesn't count.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't expect that hot of an opening at all. I don't think anybody did, like I think this was the first game we've scored more than 60 in that gym, let alone 77 or whatever we ended up. Yeah. 74 that we ended up with. I mean, 60 was kind of the ceiling on what we've done here. So to come out shooting 8 of 8 was just like, okay, fine. This is a different team.
Oh, okay, fine.
Year. Yeah,
no, okay, fine. Like, okay. That's what I was dancing.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. But the frustrating thing, Zach, is during this stretch, we didn't really put them away. Like it kind of, if you told me that SLU started that hot, it was just like, okay, so then this thing got out of hand, right? But no, not at all. I mean, we turned it over a few times. We were letting Davidson get offensive rebounds. The entire game, Davidson had a pretty healthy margin of how many more shot attempts they had than SLU. So even though we shot that well, I mean, we had to in order to win this thing, given that we just weren't giving ourselves as many chances.
Yeah, and then with the turnovers, and then the foul situation, just really brutal stretch. I thought, it's strange to me, and I tweeted it, and I'm like, we are shooting the piss out of the ball, and we're trying to force it inside. I just didn't really understand that move from Yuri there.
No, I didn't either. I mean, look, we call it decision making, call it game plan. I don't know what it was there. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know, but I think I said it early. Like, I think I said it when Yuri Collins announced the portal move. This team when this team is on, we really just need a guy to get the ball to the person's hands in the most efficient way possible. I mean, literally, if you just get it to Forrester, get it to Okoro on the block, or you get to Perkins, Parker, Jefferson, they were torching Davidson on the offensive end.
Well, and we knew, right, that was a vulnerability of Davidson. I mean, Davidson, one of the things that's been true ever since they've been in the A10, they are soft in the front court. Soft. Not necessarily that they're not skilled. They're always usually very skilled. They've got guys who could stretch it and shoot it. But I think we said coming into this game, if you're Okoro or Forrester, you got to be licking your chops here at like guys who are just weaker and less athletic and just like not that dominant at all. They don't block any shots. They're not a great rebounding team. A good post player could really have his way with that team. And it was a little frustrating because what happened instead, you wind up getting Perkins, Okoro, and Collins all on the bench for a pretty good stretch of the first half with 2 fouls apiece. And Ford held the line on that, right? So SLU only goes into half. Actually, we went into half down 4, right?
Yeah.
We're shooting 54% from the field, 46% from threes. We 3 of 4 free throws because we turned it over 5 more times. We had 4 more fouls, and it was 6 until the last possession there. And we gave up 4 more offensive rebounds. So you've got three key players on the bench. All those things are going against you. And it was unbelievable to me to go into halftime down in this game after the way that thing started.
We mentioned the fouls and 2 questions here, and I'll start with the first one. Again, I will say this, that I swear to God, every big in the A10 gets protected except for our bigs. Now, I will say that foul with Okoro when he put his hand on the back, textbook, can't do that. I get that. But it always feels like they are, you look at the end of the game where the offensive foul on the screen, right? The moving screen. I'm sorry, but a player walking forward like this, that's a moving screen. Oduro in this George Mason game today with 10 seconds left in the game sets the worst moving screen I've ever seen, and they just let the play go. Like he wasn't even trying to set a good screen. It was, but I just feel like for whatever reason, our big men are just at the mercy of the officials, and I don't understand why. Like, why are we put in this position?
Well, I mean, for one, neither of them are stars, and they don't get that kind of star treatment that guys like Oduro or Holmes or Toppin before him gets. They also don't do themselves a lot of favors because they tend to turn it over a lot. Like they kind of get happy feet offensively. I think they walk, and we went back and forth a little bit on Twitter on this the other night. It feels like they travel more than any other bigs I've seen. I mean, so
I'd be interested to know if we're proximity bias on that one too.
Very well could be. Very well could be. I mean, I looked up the numbers, and they're not great in terms of they're both turning it over 1.5 to 2 times a game, and I think Forrester is the worst violator if you look at per 40-minute averages. But yeah, they walk a lot. I don't know. I feel like they could kind of put themselves in better position a lot of time. I just think those are both guys that are 5th-year players. They got to play smarter, right? So if you're not going to get the Oduro treatment, Holmes treatment, whatever, you've got to be smarter. You've got to outwork them. You've got to outsmart them. And neither of those guys seem to have the best instincts for that sort of thing. And they get into trouble that kind of way. I kind of thought our defense overall struggled a bit here. We were not good off the ball at all. That the help defense was not there a lot of times, and we got beat a lot one-on-one too. And I'm thinking specifically of Perkins in that case where he was just kind of a few possessions in a row, he just got burned. I didn't love the defensive effort in this game.
Yeah, the second question I had was about foul trouble and managing foul trouble. Where do you stand on Travis Ford playing, or basically having a hard stance on, you have 2 fouls in the first half, you're sitting down as long as the game's close?
I would love to say I know how you kind of feel, like trust your players on this one, and
A little bit. I don't even think
a little more conservative with it is with a guy like Yuri, and specifically because we don't have a replacement for him.
Yeah.
Okoro, you just kind of go, okay, you pick up your third here, you're hoping Forster's having a good game, and he really wasn't against Davidson. No, Forster was not having a good game in this one at all.
So like the student said something about his mama or something.
Yeah.
in his
Yeah,
head.
and then I think with a guy like Perkins, you think, well, there's a guy that we actually do kind of have some answers for. You've got Parker, you've got who's played a lot better lately. You've got Jimerson out there, Hargrove. You do have some kind of options to replace him, even if Thatch is out for the season. So in those cases, I think he was just kind of protecting all three of them. But I think Yuri and Okoro, probably more than any other two players, are the last two you want to see get in foul trouble, because we just don't have depth at those positions, right? I guess you could talk about Momo, but he hasn't played much. We don't really know what he's capable of yet.
He gave us decent minutes at the end.
A nice block, little foul in this one. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm probably a little more conservative in that regard as well. It's a shame to have gone into halftime down 4. I don't think that happens if those guys aren't in foul trouble. But
I didn't like Travis Ford saying 8 to 10 point deficit. Like he would have brought him back. Like at that point, I mean, you're looking at really putting yourself in a up shit creek.
Right. Yeah. You mean saying like if it were an 8 or 10 point game, that's where I sub those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I put them back in.
Right.
Like
That's where I let them risk a third foul.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't think we're deep enough to get. I'm probably a little more conservative with that, like Travis is.
Well, you touched a little bit on the defense and being bad off the ball, getting beat a lot one-on-one, no help defense. What do you think is the deal with just? I mean, I've never seen a team, and I talked about it on Chapley Spaces after the game. I've never seen a Billiken team where I was able to easily see where we got beat. Like if we get beat, it's like I'm barely noticing it, and the ball's getting to their hands. This one, I'm seeing it and able to count a couple of Mississippis. What is going on? Is it the complexity of whatever Travis is trying to do? Is it the constant tooling around with the defenses? I mean, or is it just plain old lack of awareness on the basketball end of things?
I don't know what it was in this one. I mean, I've seen us play, like, I think about a team like Auburn, right? That's more athletic than anybody in our conference. And and we played them so well, and that's a game we should have won and kind of let get away. We just kind of played them straight up, right? I mean, just the effort was there for 40 minutes, but it was, they had a little stretch at the end where, it was close and they kind of took the lead, and we really, for that game, played just a straight up man-to-man, nothing super complicated. But it kind of feels like these teams like Davidson that run a lot of motion, like there's just a lot of motion in their offense. They're obviously not nearly as athletic or big or anything like that as an Auburn team. But I kind of felt like the defense was way worse for us. Like we struggled a lot more with what they're doing. It's almost like it's not. I don't think it's the complications on our end. I think on their end, teams that really have an offensive scheme that has a lot of movement. Our team does not play well off screens at all. So if you've got a lot of motion, a lot of screening, at some point you're going to get open, and I think that's been a problem with us all year.
Yeah, it feels like this team, we can play. The reason why we play up to our competition is because the bigger, the bigger name programs aren't necessarily worrying so much about game planning. They're just going out there and playing basketball and playing their system, which doesn't involve a lot of back cuts and double ball screens and all the stuff that like Davidson or Richmond throw out there. I mean, I would say my worst nightmare is the Princeton offense with this team.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you run into like a team like Auburn, who necessarily isn't, they're running sets and motion and actions and all this stuff, but they're kind of just playing ball. And I think that's where this team can punch above its weight, but also struggle. And when you're in a conference like the Atlantic 10, you've got programs that rely heavily on offensive sets and and a lot of motion and misdirection to get open looks. And unfortunately that's our Achilles heel. I don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's just like I said before. I mean, the teams that move well, that know what they're doing, that move well off the ball, especially like I just feel like we're so prone to lapses. We don't play off screens well at all. And then we've got guys like Perkins who it can kind of be exposed a little bit as defensive liabilities, like having trouble reading screens and then keeping up with guys, like that came into play a lot in this one. Davidson did cool off in the second half because they were not quite as hot as we were, but they were hot in the first half. But I didn't think it was because of our defense here. And then Zach, I don't know about you, but like the last few minutes of this one, I kind of don't know how to feel about it. We agree that Davidson got some home cooking in this one. But SLU did get away with a few lapses in the end of this. Like there was one time where they didn't get back in transition. Lawyer, sent a long pass forward and we kind of got away with it. Davidson missed a couple of open shots.
Because it went to Huffman, and then
yeah.
Huffman kicked it out to
Watson, maybe?
Watson.
No,
No, it wasn't Watson. But he kicked it out, and the wide open three was a miss. But I know what you're talking about. And also some backdoor cuts we got burned on.
Right.
And that's more so what I was kind of expecting to see from Davidson. We didn't see a lot of. I struggle with the idea that, our defense wasn't necessarily to blame. I think there's, obviously closing out on shooters is 1A as far as 3-point defense. But I think when it comes down to it, if you're making them work to get open, we see it a lot with Jimerson when he's off. Not necessarily that they're closing down on him, but they're just harassing him the entire game, making him work as hard as possible so that when he gets that wide open shot, if he gets that wide open shot, he's a little fatigued. He's maybe doesn't have the spring in his legs, doesn't get the proper lift off. Maybe, I don't know. That's my opinion. I think closing out is just kind of not necessarily the entire picture.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
I thought a great play at the end. We have it here, Pickett. We turned it over late against the press, but Yuri Collins got called out by the announcer for ball watching earlier in the game. And then, Pickett trying to beat pressure. He was fouled, but no call. But he finds Yuri, who, again, not ball watching in this one, finds Davidson ball watching because, you could see Menenga clear as day, look back, goes, oh, shit. So I thought it was a really good, kind of improvement from earlier in the game. It was something, you could obviously see.
Did Yuri travel on that, by the way? That
No.
last layup. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
He got it. I feel like he got it just inside the 3-point line. He didn't dribble at all.
No, I thought he got it closer to the lane.
Okay. All right.
But no, you know what? I think in the moment, I think maybe not even a tenth of a second did that flash in my brain when it happened. And I was like, no. I've seen too many travels from Okoro and Forrester tonight to know what a travel is.
I think I'm so not used to Yuri being in that situation where he's the one as the finisher. It was weird to see Pickett as the passer on that and Yuri as the finisher. But yeah, Pickett, it kind of looked like he got fouled. It seemed like they were trying to foul, quite honestly, on that play when he found Yuri and kind of that diagonal pass to hit Yuri streaking to the basket. So I didn't quite, when they didn't call it, I thought, well, this is a disaster, however this finishes, if they're not going to call this, he's going to find a way to turn this over. And luckily that bailed us out. I will say though, in terms of free throws, 10 of 13 for the game, they hit them when they mattered here. And then when you look at the kind of the final numbers here, we're plus 13 on the defensive glass, but -7 in offensive rebounds. We let up way too many offensive rebounds in this game. I kind of felt like Davidson had a knack for being in the right place in the right time when they miss. Some of this was happening, because Okoro was probably on the bench more than he normally would have been. Some happened when SLU switched to his zone, but still, that defensive rebounding margin's got to be higher against a team like Davidson. You just can't let up offensive rebounds like that to them. But Zach, one other thing I noticed in this game, the scoring was really spread out here. I thought it was a good team effort offensively.
Yeah, Pickett, unbelievable. I mean, like, just ridiculous float game in this one.
Yeah,
Um,
teardrop after teardrop.
yeah, it was wild. I mean, it's almost to the point where I'm like really, really comfortable even with the most ridiculous floater shot from him. He just seems to swish everything. He's just got the right touch. Perkins was percolating in this one. I think he had that ridiculous circus shot that had all the makings of a dagger in the heart of Davidson and
Right.
one. I still don't know how that didn't make Sports Center top 10.
Yeah,
Because that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
it was a cool finish.
Jimerson was good, I thought. Hargrove was unbelievable in this one, comparatively speaking.
He was, yeah. I mean, you wind up Perkins 13, Collins 12, Jimerson 11, Hargrove 9, Okoro 8. Everybody's involved there. Hargrove was good. He's given us good minutes in every game lately. Okoro was good too, but he just couldn't stay out of foul trouble. Forrester was just a mess in this one. He still winds up with 8 rebounds, and it was 2 of 3 for the field, but 4 turnovers, and man, it felt more like 6. 4 turnovers, by the way, is how many turnovers Davidson had in the entire game. When you're not forcing turnovers, you really have to be very, very good in other facets of the game. You have to be shooting well. I don't know how we don't force any turnovers. We let up that many offensive rebounds and we still get away with one. That can't happen if we're having a even average shooting night.
What do you think the reason is for the lack of turnovers? Do you think it's poor defense? Do you think it's the strategy of the defense? I mean, we really aren't a ball hawking team. I know that's kind of obvious to say.
Yeah,
We're definitely not a Majerus disrupt the passing lane team.
no, not at all.
I mean, do you think it's just by design?
I guess so. I mean, it makes me wonder now too, like how much of that was because of a guy like Jordan Goodwin, he just creates. He's a one-on-one wizard in terms of getting guys to cough the ball up. I wonder what our steal numbers would have been like without him in those years. But regardless, yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of personnel and scheme. I don't think we have a lot of length. There aren't many times where we're the longer of the two teams, we're clearly not doing anything to disrupt passing lanes. And then one-on-one, we just don't have those kind of guys who hawk the ball like Goodwin did. I know
I
he's
did think
an exception, but
I did think we should have had probably 2 more steals in this one that maybe were called for fouls. I believe Larry Hughes had one, maybe, and I know Yuri might have had one in there, or Pickett. But I will say the steal by Yuri Collins, I think it was in the second half on Menenga, where he read that perfectly. He knew exactly what that action was going to be and where they wanted to get that ball, and he helped off his man and jumped that lane.
yeah,
And stole. I just thought that was great coaching, great preparation. I don't think we talk enough when there is a play like that that's obviously prepared for and scouted.
yeah,
So I think Travis Ford and staff need to be given credit there.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I
Uh,
think this is probably a game, not that he's the guy who generates the most steals, but I think Thatch really would have helped anchor the defense on this game. I don't know if you agree on that, but I kind of felt like he was a bit of a missing piece in this one.
it's interesting because you can sit here and say, well, if Thatch doesn't go out with an injury, Parker doesn't have his little renaissance he's having. Perkins isn't, it's not sink or swim with Perkins. Like, hey, buddy, kind of time to do something here. Same with Yuri Collins being sick. I really don't know. I don't know what to make. I obviously I'm a huge Fred Thatch fan, both personally and on the basketball court. But I really like where this team is trending offensively. I just wish that we could find some way to be better defensively. with the current roster.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, it's something they're aware of. Stu wrote an article about this. Gosh, what, like a month or two ago, about like our lack of forcing these. So yeah, I don't know what it is. We wind up with 7 more turnovers than them in this game. Not that 11's a bad number, but on their floor, where they wind up with 5 fewer fouls than us. It means that Davidson had 13 extra field goals in this game, compared to SLU. That's a big difference. You got to be a lot better shooting the ball if you're going to have 13 fewer attempts. It's just like that. So
It do be like
I don't know what the answer is there, Zach. I really don't.
You had a bone to pick with this Lunardi segment in the
Oh my
in the
God.
second half.
Yeah,
I hate anytime he's on. I really do.
We talked about Lunardi a few weeks ago when he was doing play. I guess what was that, St. Joe's, where he was actually the color commentator, and man, was he annoying. But he calls in on this one, and we've never had sound quality that bad. I mean, it sounded like he was calling from like
he's embedded with the troops.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
like,
in
yeah, like he was
Fallujah.
like a phone tied to a box, like a backpack. He had a backpack phone on. So
he was calling from
horrible.
Wonder Woman 84.
But they let him talk for like 5 minutes. It was like a whole segment between commercials that he talked about bracketology for. By the way, as if the A10 is really a multi-bid league right now.
I think it is, man. I will say I agree. I hate to admit it.
But if he's going to come on and give us a little brief of that, you got to be able to even understand what he's saying.
Absolutely.
The one kind of really, besides
a lot of memes out of this one.
Exactly. Besides lifting the curse, we did have kind of a fun new, I don't know, do you call it a meme, or what do you call this, Zach?
I don't know. I think it's a meme. I don't think it's reached a trend yet. I think the SLU students for sure should do this to do the Tate. Unreal video out of the Billiken locker room. If you haven't seen this video, I can't play it on YouTube because they'll strike our channel. But basically it's to I Just Want to Rock by Lil Uzi Vert is the song. And Tate's outside the door of this shanty locker room. And he's hyped up, decides to it was time for tarps off, rips off his shirt and dances to the song. I mean, it was just amazing. And then of course, Gaines tweets on Twitter, decided he was gonna do it himself, and just with an absolutely perfect impression. And then I forget, there was Michael Gaines did it, and then one more other guy did it. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I should have saved it. And then I decided to do it the next day. I don't know. I did neither of them justice. None of them.
You have a different physique than some of the guys do.
It was Jack Armstrong who did it, and he also did an awesome. He also did a really, really good one. But I honestly, I think they should change the intro music to "I Just Want to Rock." I think they should just dub this song over it. But yeah, I think, Pete, I think this bodes well for the Billikens, right? Every St. Louis sports team, and I'm sure this is something that happens in every city, but every St. Louis championship team has had their rally cry, right? You had the 99 Rams with the bob and weave. You had the 11 Cardinals with the rally squirrel. The 2018-19 Billikens, I think, and people can correct me if I'm wrong here, they had the hard hats. The 19 Blues had Gloria. Do the Billikens of 2022-23 have Do the Tate and I Just Want to Rock?
If it works, if it helps us win games, if it helps us hold on to first place, do whatever you got to do. I'll take it.
This sort of thing just feels like one of those things that you rally around. You know, Corey Tate ripping off his shirt in the locker room. Like,
it's a vibes thing, right?
We have such weird coaches.
It's a vibes thing. You're all about the vibe check. It's a great vibes thing.
The vibe was off the hook. It
Right.
really was. I've been bumping that song since that video came out. Is the curse officially over? My guy in the 55 Davidson jersey thinks so. He was distraught. It looks like he I've never seen this face on this kid is ridiculous.
Why don't you can you share this on
Yeah, I
YouTube
can
while you do this?
hold on.
So
Hold
Zach's
on.
going to share this. It's going to take a minute. But I want to just to sum this one up. SLU now moves to 7-1 in the A10, and it kind of doesn't feel like it, just because you've got that early loss to UMass. There's a lot of ugly wins. I could be wrong. There's a lot of other people saying they like the way the teams look lately. They think they're having fun. They're playing well. To me, there's a lot to clean up. And now Zach has our crying Davidson fan on here.
This is just insane.
He's doing this in the first half, right before Davidson takes the lead.
There's so much to love in this photo too, because you've got guy on the left who's just not having it. He's had enough of these three that he's sitting next to.
Yeah.
You've got guy on the to the left of sleeveless that looks like he's stoned out of his mind. And then to the right looks like he's tripping balls. And then this guy looks like somebody just shot his dog. That's literally like he's got like this is the face of a man in the middle of a war.
He's afraid for his life right there. I gotta say, I don't remember who was saying it. The Davidson's student body, they look like the bad guys in every 80s comedy. I think that's absolutely true. They do have that, like the slobs versus snobs. They're the preppy jerks. That's what they bring to the league. They're the country club school. It's just I think it's just who Davidson is.
Menanga looks like Ike or John Barinholtz from Superstore. Grant Huffman looks like Dave Franco.
Yeah.
It's the memes write themselves with this team.
They do. This is not a likable, not always the most likable team to play against.
I think the best part about the giveaway was that it was like a street look. Like the two-tone jersey, very street look-ish. And you're putting it on just a bunch of suburban kids. Like it's just very, very, the juxtaposition of that is just insane.
Yeah, you're right.
But what an absolute just amazing way to spend Friday 10.
This game has delivered, like a lot of the other Friday 10 games, it really has delivered.
SLU moves to 7-1 in the A10. Doesn't necessarily feel like it at all. I think there's a lot of negativity still around the program. You combination that early loss at UMass, some ugly wins. I think this team looks like they're at least having fun again. But I see a lot of people out there, jokingly or not, talking about how we're set up for a Fordham letdown. We're going to go to Rose Hill and get beat. And of course, just ruin our day. Pete, what do you think about this from fans? Is it self-deprecation or something a little more less than stellar vibey?
It's a SLU fan thing. It's a recent history and all of our history. We've gone over this before. We're always waiting for that other shoe to drop. It's always
two steps forward. What does that phrase mean? I never know what that phrase means. Like, what's the origin of that phrase?
I wasn't prepared to speak on the etymology of a colloquialism in this, so I'm just going to go right through it. I don't know. But no, we're used to, like, when things are going well, something pops our balloon. We're just used to it. It just happens. That's all it is. It's conditioning.
Of course.
Plus, and we're going to
Pavlov. We're Pavlov's Billikens.
Yeah, and we'll get into it soon, but Fordham's actually pretty good this year. But just as importantly as being 7-1 and first in the A10, we've got 5 of our 9 road games out of the way. The 4 left to go: Fordham, Dayton, Richmond, VCU. It's a tough bunch. How do you? I don't know. How do you feel here? 4-1 in our first 5 road games, I think, is pretty good. As much as I would like to look at all 5 of those and go, yeah, those are teams we should beat. we know that we've never historically played well on the road in the A10, and I think 4-1's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. I'm happy with the way things are going. Obviously, people will say it's the lighter side of the schedule, but it's also dense. And I think our team is waking up. We've I don't want to say a corner has been turned, but at least like we've veered a little bit. We've taken like a side street to
Right.
a better neighborhood. Um, but I like where this team's trending. If this team can clean up the defense, it's sky's the limit for what we're capable of going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're playing. I don't know. It's been an uneven season. Everything about it. I think there are things that we could be doing better, but I'll take 4-1 on the road. I'm okay with that.
Around the A10, Pete. Tuesday the 24th, Davidson beats LaSalle 64-57. Wednesday, an OT game between the soon to be artists formerly known as the Colonials versus the St. Joe's Hawks. 92-91. George Washington takes it. UMass beats Richmond 85-76. Looks like Frank Martin's little spiel maybe got to his guys a little bit.
We went deep on that before, and yeah, apparently it worked.
And I got drunk last night and decided to tweet about it. Duquesne, Loyola, the DoorDash hoax game, if you will. Were you watching this one? Did you see this live, or when did you see this?
I saw this after the fact. I saw you and some other people were texting me about it before I ever saw what was actually going on. So no, I didn't. Why don't you run us through this little DoorDash, whatever it was here?
So 72-58 win for Duquesne in this one. Man, what hurts me so much about this one is how genuinely fucking fun. Oh, Jesus. Genuinely funny it is. And how like to learn that it was fake. It was just like you finding out that, like, I don't know, the tooth fairy isn't real. It is just so sad to me. By the way, we should probably put two disclaimers there. One for ruining childhood and one for language.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
it's
so
it's gonna be a tough one to take my kids to school if this episode's
God.
planned.
So this guy just decides he walks out on the court. He's carrying a McDonald's bag and a McDonald's drink and looking totally confused, as though he's trying to deliver DoorDash to a person courtside. Everyone kind of took it at face value originally in the moment, and but it turns out it was just a TikTok, YouTube thing. Dude, don't go on the court at a like. These guys have worked their entire life to this point. Like, it's not the time to prank them.
Right.
I first of all, pranks have jumped the shark with YouTube and TikTok. That they have basically killed the idea of a prank. If you film a prank, you're an idiot. Just do the prank in the moment and move on.
But I also I don't like the premise of this one.
No.
Like the first thing I thought of before I knew anything about it was just like, you can't order DoorDash in a ticketed event. Like an arena, like you don't show up at a gate at an arena and be like, I have McDonald's for someone. They just go away. Like, no, this isn't, like that's not how it works. You can't like, we have concessions. You're not allowed to bring in outside food. You aren't going to buy a ticket just to deliver someone's food. The premise of the joke is dumb. Like, I immediately had like these questions, like something's going on here. Something's not right. Like, it's just if the very premise is not realistic.
No, you're right. You're right. But
it just doesn't make sense.
I will say though that, I think you and I come from a world where we are always going to games in arenas, and not necessarily arenas attached to student centers. Like Loyola, like I could see being able to order food to that game. Like because it's, I could order it to the student center. But they would never come courtside, I'm sure of it. Although late in the game, then nobody may be paying attention either. So, it's a stupid prank. Pranks are stupid in general. Unless you're just I mean, obviously this one was technically harmless, but again, you had the chance that it security's got to do better too, obviously.
Right. And Duquesne said after the game, we're changing our security policies, we're beefing up security. Which is it's funny, that this is the outcome of this dumb prank, but I hope this idiot got the attention he wanted.
Yeah, a lot of weird stuff happening in A10 basketball this week. VCU beats George Mason 72-52. They're coming on strong, putting up big numbers this week. Fordham 79, Bonaventure 68. Fordham wins for the first time ever at St. Bonaventure, I believe.
Really?
Or first time in a long time. I think it's
All
since the early 2000s or 90s. Dayton 86, Richmond 60. UMass 87, Duquesne 79. Bonaventure.
Wait, you skipped a few here. You skipped a few. Fordham, St. Bonaventure. Then you've got
sorry.
Yeah, go back to Rhode
Island.
Island
Versus Dayton. Oh no. 75-70. Archie Miller gets his revenge against UD.
Yeah, he sure does. Shocking result, quite honestly.
I was like, yeah, this will probably be the one. If they're gonna lay an egg, it's gonna be against Archie.
Well, if he got his revenge, I hope Jake Forrester gets his revenge against Archie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. Saturday the 28th, as I said, Rhode Island 72, LaSalle 70. I just don't know what to do with the cluster F that is this, the bottom of the conference. It's very much just a bunch of teams cannibalizing each other.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that are 4 and 5 right now in conference. When they play each other, it's a coin flip. There's no way to predict what's going on in this league.
Sicko conference. Fordham 85, GW 70. Wow. Dayton 86, Richmond 60. Richmond clearly drew the ire of Dayton after the Rhode Island debacle. And of course, Dayton moves up 30 spots for that win in that. UMass 87, Duquesne 79, Bonaventure 61, VCU 58. My goodness, Peter. This some league, man.
Bonaventure has been a miserable road team, and VCU is a good home team. I just, what a perplexing result.
Sunday the 29th. I watched this game while doing 2 hours on the treadmill, Peter. And I got to tell you, laughing while running is difficult. This game was so terrible. 79-76, St. Joe's beats George Mason. In my mind, Peter, this one was a classic example of two different things. A game nobody wanted to win and consistent poor decision-making. I mean, we lament Yuri Collins driving into trouble a lot and, forcing things. Oh my God. I don't even know what this dude's name is on St. Joe's that just for 5 straight minutes, he just decided their offense was going to be him going to the basket right away as soon as he crossed half court. I don't get it. What does Billy Lang do up there?
It's a good question, Zach. Yeah, it's a good question. I did not see this one. I not that I was necessarily doing anything I wanted to do. I think I was at the time this game was going on. I think I was at a child's birthday party, a 6-year-old's birthday party. I don't know which is worse, but from the sounds of it, it sounds like maybe this game was.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Pete, Survivor picks. We're not doing so hot, man.
The first few weeks, I felt like we were pretty good at this.
Chalk,
right? We started really well. But we've fallen off a cliff lately. You had Dayton over GW on the 21st, and that loss put you into the second chance bracket. I had Duquesne over Fordham on the 21st, and I'm out. I'm done with this. But luckily, the podcast had Davidson over LaSalle on the 24th and barely pulled that one out. This week, Zach, what happened on your second chance bracket pick here?
Yeah, two just absolute horrendous beats in a row for me, Pete. I had VCU over Bonaventure. Clearly that lost, and I am out. Podcast has Richmond over Bonaventure on the 1st of February. So I will be keeping tabs on that one, obviously. What day is that? Is that
February
it's
1st
Wednesday.
would be Tuesday.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're right. Tuesday, Wednesday.
So hopefully the podcast can hang on in the second chance bracket. So it's just Pete and I putting our heads together and trying to come up with a winner.
Yep.
Pete, let's talk about this Fordham game. It's where the lone night or the lone game of Tuesday night in the A10. Billikens Rams at historic Rose Hill Gymnasium. They've been packing that place up there.
They have, and you don't need a lot of people to do that. But the reason they're doing that, Zach, what if I told you heading into this season that Fordham, by the time we played them, would be 17-4? Even against a pretty weak schedule, I'm betting you would not have believed me.
Not a chance in hell, Peter.
No. And again, not a good schedule, right? I mean, they're 4 losses. One was to, at the time, number 10 Arkansas. That's a good one. But they come into conference play with a 12-1 record. There are some like halfway decent wins here at Tulane's a pretty good win. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot here that really helps your strength of schedule, especially because they only left home twice for that Arkansas game and the Tulane game. Everything else was at home, kind of shockingly. Harvard, decent team. Everybody else, I'm looking through the Zach, they didn't really beat anybody, but still, they're Fordham. They've always been at the bottom of our conference, and they've lost to a lot of teams like this, the kind of teams that you would think everybody in our conference would beat. So all they do to start out the league is lose to Davidson and Rhode Island back to back. They lost to Dayton in their 4th game, so they start 1-3 in the league, and now they're on a 4-game winning streak, including 3 road wins in a row at LaSalle, at Duquesne, and at St. Bonaventure. A couple of those are kind of tough places to play, and then they just beat George Washington, like you said, at home by 15 this week. I think the main reason here, when I'm looking at Fordham, is what's changed year over year. It's not just Quisenberry anymore. We know who Darius Quisenberry is. He's a senior. He was one of the leading scorers in the league last year. They added a guy, Khalid Moore, a senior transfer out of Georgia Tech. I think he's technically a grad transfer. It's his 5th year. And Quisenberry is averaging about 17. Moore has come in, and he's a 6'7", 200-pound forward. I believe he's local too. He's kind of from the New York area, and he's averaging 15 and 7. He's been absolutely what they needed as kind of the 1A to Quisenberry. Whereas it was just kind of Quisenberry and everybody else last year. The rest of the roster, they kind of spread the scoring out. There's nothing that really jumps off the page here in terms of what they do. They do have one guy, Will Richardson, who's a freshman who's kind of been playing well lately. And he's a guy that SLU actually recruited, a guy SLU offered out of high school. Just seems like everybody in the A10 has one of those. In terms of what Fordham does well, again, there's not a whole lot to point at that's like, this is who this team's identity is. They're a pretty good rebounding team. They're a really good free throw shooting team. They do actually block a lot of shots. Other than that, there's nothing offensively that really jumps out at you. You've got those 2 players. It kind of goes through them. And I think we're going to have the kind of game here, Zach, where the defensive lapses just don't happen like they have recently. We're going into a gym of a team that's playing with a lot of positive vibes lately, a lot of good mojo. They're a veteran team. Their top 5 are all seniors and juniors. They've got they've got, I don't know how to say his last name, Nowitzki. He's a 6'10", 225-pound guy. Eastern European dude. He's a second-year player, and good rebounder, good shot blocker. I think he's going to be a little bit of a matchup problem for our 5 men. Look, this is a team, they haven't really been super battle tested. The A10 for them represents a really big jump up in their strength of schedule. But they've really been they've played a ton of home games, and they've been holding serve at home. And I think we have to be ready to go in there and play very low mistake, low error basketball, with a lot of toughness against these guys. And you got to hope that whoever's guarding Quisenberry and Moore is up to the task. We've got to stay out of foul trouble. Yuri's got to be smart in this one. And I think we can get it done. I know you're probably more confident than I am going into this one. But we need this one, like if we're going to get some more road wins, you look at what we've got left, and it's them, and it's VCU, and it's Richmond and Dayton. And this is the one that jumps off as being the most obvious candidate for another road win. So would love to see SLU pick off another one here.
Yeah, and I think if we win this game, obviously it's been talked about by multiple people, that it'll be a packed house on Friday.
Yeah,
if we bring this one home.
Yeah, for VCU and SLU at Shea Foods, right?
Speaking of VCU, let's get right into, actually, Pete, before we get into that VCU preview, and it is a awesome Friday 10 preview. Let's talk about 2 Men in a Garden, Pete.
Yeah, we really do need to. And I want to remind everybody that the NFL playoffs are here. And you need a well-stocked fridge for that. I think you can do that at 2meninagarden.com. Zach, I don't know if you've been over there lately, but I find myself doing a lot more browsing of kind of those partner products that we've been talking about a little bit lately. There's just a lot of fun stuff on here. And we always talk about how you've got to have your salsa, your pickles ready. They've got these River City craft cocktail syrups, and I don't know about you, but maybe it's a thing where, as my friends and I are getting a little bit older, I have friends now who like legitimately are great at making cocktails. Like I would put them up against pretty well-trained bartenders, and I feel like, as you get older, you got to have a well-stocked a bar cart, so to speak, with a lot of variations here. And I'm curious about these River City craft cocktail syrups. I kind of want to give a couple of these a shot, see what I'm capable of at home. They've got a lot more product partner stuff over here. My mom lately is all about the hot honey. They've got a couple, the Blessed Bee honey company that does a lot of different flavored honeys. Check those out too. But you can find all of this and more, 2meninagarden.com, and go to their kitchen hub to see what other products they've got for you besides their own excellent pickles and salsas.
Yeah, I absolutely love that they have all these products, and I got when I got a chance to head into their facility, I grabbed a bunch of different stuff. So I eat a lot of chicken, so I'd love to see what kind of spices they had, or like spice blends, because I keep a pretty hefty stock of those. So we talked to Connor Bailey of the Black and Gold Fan Podcast. It's a VCU podcast. It's their first year, but we got to speak with him. It's a great preview, and I'm going to send it over to that right now. Billiken fans, we are getting ready to preview Friday 10, Billikens versus VCU Rams, 6:00 Central Time on ESPN 2. Is it on the Deuce, Pete? I don't know. One of the two channels. We have Connor Bailey from the Black and Gold Fan Podcast. Connor, thanks for joining us on such short notice.
Guys, I appreciate the shout out, man. it's college basketball season, and I don't, you could ask me 6 days in advance or 1 hour in advance. I'm ready to go, especially when it's Friday 10.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete.
So yeah, this one, VCU is this is going to be an interesting one, right? Because a lot of people were looking at this as kind of a potential first place battle, but I guess VCU kind of had a little stumble heading into this one. And sorry to go there right away, but I gotta know what's up. What's up with that Bonaventure loss?
I was there last night in our most recent podcast, which was Thursday evening. Our most recent episode, I mentioned, hey, we're on a 6-game win streak. 5 of those 6 wins haven't even been close. The only close one was really the miracle Dayton win 2 Friday 10s ago. But in my podcast, in our episode, I said, we're going to have a game. I'm not even going to count the St. Louis or the Dayton. The 2 St. Louis games or the Dayton game remaining. Those are going to be close games. But we're going to have a game against a team that's, in theory, inferior. And we're just going to have to grind our way to a win. I didn't think it was going to happen last night. I thought Bonaventure, 1 win away from home against a bad Notre Dame team. I didn't think we were going to win by 30. I thought we were up 5 at the half. I thought we were going to wear them out. And it just never did. Mark Schmidt outcoached our team. We missed 2 front ends of 1-and-1s right before the first half and in the last minute and a half. But yeah, man, last night's ride home, I live about 10 minutes from the Stuart C. Siegel Center, and that ride home stunk. It was a bummer.
It's funny that you mentioned like, oh, we're gonna have, and I actually have it in the notes for later in our show, when we get into the Davidson game, because it's funny how you're saying like, oh, we're 5 and whatever, and we're due for a letdown game, and if Billiken fans are doing the same thing right now, and I've become fascinated with this phenomenon of fans thinking that things are unique to their team, much like people think like road construction is unique to their city, but it's everywhere. But every fan base goes through the same thing. Every fan base laments the long offensive droughts, the dumb turnovers. We looked at our last game, Yuri had 2 or 3 really bad turnovers in a row. And then I'm watching George Mason and St. Joe today, and it's the same thing.
Oh my God.
And you're like, but yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, how do you when you have such high expectations on your team, when, for VCU, as a VCU fan, how are you guys staying, positive through that?
So, I've been a fan my whole life. I'm 30 years old. I've been watching basketball since I was 8. And pretty much since 2007, Anthony Grant's first year as VCU head coach, we've been very good. He's excellent. We beat Duke in 07. He was the head coach. Talk about him later if you want. But, pretty much since 06, 07, we've only had 2 years. We haven't won 20 games since then. We won 19 games in the 2021 season, but we went 19-7, made the tournament that year. So that's a little different, but 2 full seasons where we haven't won 20 games. So we've always found ways to be good. But you kind of mentioned turnovers and stuff. And we shot bad from the foul line last night against St. Bonaventure. I can't remember the exact stat. But the big thing was the front end 1-to-1s. But I have friends that are like, oh, we're so bad from the 3-point line. Coming into last night, we were leading the A10 in conference play, shooting threes. We were the best team. So it's one of those things. It's kind of it's every fan base, especially if you're not great every year, like a Kansas or someone, it's a lot of woe is me.
Proximity bias that we are dog shit.
Yeah, no, we can all agree. No one's as bad as Dayton fans with that. They're the worst. But I love them too. I love talking to Dayton fans, but they're the worst woe is me. But you mentioned just kind of, I have friends that are like, man, in the Rhodes era, we stink from the foul line. I'm like, dude, I've watched VCU basketball my whole life. We've always been bad from the foul line. We're always bad. You kind of mentioned excuses. It's like, oh, if we would have made 3 more free throws, we would have gone to overtime. It doesn't work like that. The game changes. It's just because we lost by 3 points doesn't mean if we would have made 1 more 3, we would have gone to overtime. It doesn't work like that.
No, I won't buy that, because it helps me get over the 11-12 loss to Michigan State in the second round. The Rob Lowe airballing a 3 that would have changed the game. I'm sticking to that. But
I watched that game. VCU. That was my freshman year at VCU, 2011-12. That's our last year in the CAA. We were a 12 seed. We played Wichita State. beat them in the first round, lost to Indiana by 2 in the second round. So this is the Sunday of the tournament. I was at the Phoenix airport with my dad watching St. Louis play Michigan State at like a Chili's or like Applebee's or Fridays, whatever, like
the best
random
part of an airport.
Yeah. We're sitting, we're in the Phoenix airport waiting to fly back from Phoenix to like Charlotte or DC. And I mean, we just lost the day beforehand by 2 to Indiana. I'm tired. But I remember watching that game, and we were a CAA team then. We hadn't even joined the A10 yet. So there was no allegiance to the conference, but so just a little fun fact about what you just said.
Still rooting for the underdog, I'm sure.
Of course, I don't want Lakes Party, and heck, unfortunately, I never got to see VCU play against Majerus in the A10, but in the CBI championship in 2010, they came to the Siegel Center. We won game 1 at the Siegel Center. It's still funny to me that VCU and St. Louis played in the CBI title game,
right?
Or, title series, excuse me.
Sure.
Clarify that. But yeah, of course, I was rooting for St. Louis then.
So I want to talk about expectations coming into the season versus performance, to date so far. It felt like between SLU and Dayton, we were arguing back and forth about whose conference this was going to be this year. And VCU was always kind of the one who was like, no, like we're right there too. And it's funny because all 3 teams have it's felt like disappointed their fan bases to some degree this season. And yet all 3 of them are right there, right now, maybe not in the way we thought we would be, but kind of in the hunt for those top 3 or so spots. And I'm looking through your schedule right now, and you get out to like a 5-4 start, right? And that fourth is a loss to Jacksonville. And I'm just kind of wondering, overall checkup, how's this season going? Like the non-conference clearly didn't go quite how you wanted. Maybe it ended with a few wins. And what are the things you think VCU is doing well this season, and where have you guys underperformed?
So you mentioned kind of expectations coming into the season. You're right. It was pretty much any rating, whether it be within the A10 media or NCAA media, it was constantly St. Louis or Dayton. My preseason pick was actually St. Louis. I know a lot of people picked Dayton. I still had some concerns about Dayton's depth, but I thought VCU was like, if you put both of them 1, I thought VCU was 1A. I thought VCU was miles ahead of everyone else. But losing Vince Williams to graduation and Keyshawn Curry to graduation, Vince Williams is a 2nd-round draft pick. You guys lost Jordan Goodwin a couple of years. It's hard to replace an NBA player. So I did think that they were right there. Just maybe it would take time to gel. But you mentioned the out of conference. We picked up a great win at the Barclays Center against Pitt. That was my 30th birthday week, and I got to see that game live, which was pretty cool. And that was without Ace Baldwin, which was huge. And I know. It was funny. We beat Pitt, and a lot of St. Louis fans on Twitter were like, "Hey, we beat Pitt a couple of years ago." Or no, I think you guys lost to Pitt by 2 a couple of years ago, right? It was when French missed a couple free throws.
Yeah, we lost that one. I think in that event we beat Seton Hall and lost to Pitt or something.
That's like that. I remember a bunch of SLU fans were like, "Trust me, beating Pitt doesn't do anything for you." And then Pitt's a good team this year.
Right.
Pitt hasn't been good forever, man.
It's a shame, man. I grew up watching Big East games on the East Coast, and they were great my whole life. But Pitt's a potential tournament team right now. SLU probably has the best win in Providence in the out of conference. Memphis won 2, and then Pitt's probably the 3rd best win for the A10 out of conference. But you mentioned the games. Then we go to Memphis and kind of get hammered. We lose by 15, and honestly, it was a 20-point loss. We barely beat Kennesaw State, who actually is okay this year, but I mean, we needed like a prayer. And then we beat Vanderbilt mainly because Jerry Stackhouse got canned. By the way, did you see that viral video from like the stands of him getting escorted out? Because that was 100% from my phone. Adam, who's our main host, like tweeted it because I sent him so like we had like 40,000 views on Twitter. It was pretty fun. Just hope everyone knows that's courtesy of my phone. But then we went up to Temple, a mediocre at best Temple team. They're 14-9 this year. They beat Houston, but they're still mediocre. I went up with my dad and played like crap. Gave up 83 points to a team that 2 weeks before that scored 49 against Richmond. And then Jacksonville, that's one of the worst. I bet you guys can imagine there's been some rough games at St. Louis for good St. Louis teams. You've experienced some rough home games, just like where you just don't show up. Jacksonville's definitely top 5 worst home experience I've ever had in my life. I mean, we had no aggression. Jalen Deloach didn't play, but just the team didn't look like they cared. They didn't look like they knew they had a basketball game that night. And then we won a few games against Howard and Radford, kind of just eked our way through wins. And then it was Northern Illinois and Navy. We kind of got rolling. So in a nutshell, I went into conference play. I thought this was an 11-7 or 12-6 VCU team, which could finish third or fourth, maybe. I still thought St. Louis looked bar none the best in A10, even for the stinker against SIU Edwardsville and whatnot. I still thought St. Louis looked the best, and I thought Dayton would find a way if they got healthy to get there. Then we opened A10 play, and we beat LaSalle by 13 on New Year's Eve, but didn't look that good. We lost to Duquesne, pretty much got dominated. And then there was a 6-game win streak. One of them was the miracle at Dayton, which was awesome, trust me. But regarding expectations, preseason I picked us to go about 13-5 in the A10 preseason November. Pre-A10 play had us about 11-7, 12-6. Right now we're 7-2. Still got to play SLU twice. Still got to play Dayton at home. But just like St. Louis, just like Dayton, a team that can easily finish between 13-5 and 15-3 and finish first, second, or third. So I feel good. The Bonaventure game stunk. Don't get me wrong. It was a bummer. Mark Schmidt's a great coach. I won't deny that, but it was a stinker. But 16-6 overall, 7-2 in conference play. I think that's slightly better than I thought we'd be this year.
You mentioned the game against Edwardsville for SLU, and I think that one was absolutely a product of matchup issues. Barone, the coach over there, is a huge matchup guy. He's always trying to find the mismatch in his favor, and I think it was a nightmare situation. We at the time we didn't really have a 4, and even now we're running with either when we do need a 4, it's either Terrence Hargrove, who has been a revelation since coming back from some personal mental issues, I guess you want to say. It's been publicized, but I'm curious. That leads me to my question about what is the matchup nightmare for VCU? Like, what kind of team do you not want to see VCU play in the NCAA tournament if they get there?
We've struggled against big guys. And when I mean big, I'm talking just major size. Deron Holmes is a very good. When I mean big, I'm talking like heavy, like a freight train. Deron Holmes is an excellent big man. He can play. Our message that night at Dayton, we were like, hey, we're gonna double team him the whole night. Kamara had 27 points, and he kicked our butt last year too. But Holmes, for the most part, didn't really hurt us that much. But I look at when we played Kennesaw State this year, we barely beat them. They had a really big guy, Rob. I forgot his last name, but he was about 6'7", 270, and he just was pummeling us all night at like 14 points and 12 rebounds. Last night, Chad Venning for St. Bonaventure, I don't know if it's Jalen Deloach is a very good athlete. His brother plays football at Florida State. Jalen Deloach is long, can match up with a guy like Holmes, but Chad Venning just pummeled us all night. He had 2 huge spin moves at the very end of the game. So I would say a team that has a big guy, maybe not an athlete, but just someone with some meat. And you don't see a whole lot of that in our conference. So that's a matchup I don't love. The other one is if you just have a guy, if you have some guys who can shoot the 3 ball real well. I know Gibson Jimerson at times this year. I know he had a stretch in December where he just was ice cold, but he's kind of come back a little bit in conference. We had a good game against Mason, I know, which I still don't know if you guys won that game, but that's a different conversation. But Jimerson's a guy. Could he have a night where he hits 5 threes? Someone that's just really just feeling it. So I would say either a big with some actual, like not even a stretch big, just someone who we have trouble pushing off the block, or a guy they don't have to be a star player, but just someone who can shoot, and they hit 3 threes in the first half. Next thing you know, they're 6 from 8 for 3.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we thought this SLU team, and why we were so high on this team, is because you have a guy like Gibson Jimerson, who's a 40+% 3-point shooter in his career. Javante Perkins is a complete bucket from 3 and mid range, and can do unbelievable things with the basketball when he gets to the rim, like Barnum and Bailey circus shots. And then we had Sincere Parker coming in, who was a JUCO All-American, Peter.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, he was the lead. He wasn't leading scoring average, but he had the most points in JUCO that year. I mean, he was a big time scorer. Yeah.
And also can bomb threes. He's starting to finally come around. Javante's starting to get healthy. And he's had 2 big games in a row. SLU Twitter account just kind of highlighted that as well. But yeah, so that makes me happy. And of course we have Franco, and I mean Forrester's a little lighter, but
Forrester can at least he's a body at a minimum.
Oh, yeah.
He's long, gets rebounds and whatnot. Hargrove's tough. I feel like if you didn't put names on the back, I just feel like I'm watching a slightly smaller version of Jordan or Jet out there. Like he's just a tank.
Little bit
like
taller, a little smaller,
Yeah.
or a little bit taller, a little thinner, less muscle. But yeah.
But the dreads and just like the way he like gallops to the bucket, like he just takes it to the rack. So Hargrove can be that's a guy. Friday night, I don't know who for VCU guards him. I'll just be honest. I don't know. Maybe Jameer Watkins, because Jameer Watkins is long a little bit and he's got some size, but he's someone who in the VCU St. Louis matchup, I don't know fully who guards him.
I want to get into some more specific personnel things. I mean, by now, SLU fans pretty much know who Ace Baldwin is. A little bit of familiarity with like Nunn and Deloach. Tell us about Brandon Johns and David Shriver. These are two guys, transfers. And for those who haven't really watched a lot of VCU, what do those guys bring to the squad?
So Brandon Johns Jr. Was a 4-year player at Michigan. Was actually a John Beilein recruit. Excuse me. Yeah, he was a John Beilein. He played for 2 years for John Beilein.
Oh my God.
And then, it was 1 year for Beilein, 3 years for Howard. But in the NCAA tournament in 2021, the Sweet 16 game for Michigan was a 1 seed. He scored like double figures against Florida State. But he comes here, graduated in 4 years from Michigan, and we needed a post presence. Hassan Ward had transferred out and went to Iowa State, and it wasn't much of a scorer. But Johns Jr. this year, in conference play, is averaging 12 and 4. Not a great rebounder by any means. But shooting 60% from the floor in conference play right now, 44 to 73 field goals. Was told he could shoot threes when he came here, and he's made a couple, but his percentages are low. Good free throw shooter for a big guy. But he's Brandon Johns Jr. is someone who we try to run the offense through him if we can. If there are times when a team will throw a 2-3 zone at us, say, hey, especially in the out of conference, you couldn't hit threes. Throw a 2-3 zone on them, make them shoot it. And we've been in instances where Johns will pop up to the elbow. His only problem is he turns the ball over a lot. He has 29 turnovers in 9 games in conference play. And a lot of it's trying to do a spin move and someone's there to just kind of pick his pocket. So he's someone, if you threw Forrester on him, I could see John scoring on Forrester because Forrester doesn't have quite the size. Maybe, would you try to put a Coro? I kind of asked in the for someone he's not incredibly huge, but he's got good post moves. He played in the Big Ten. I don't know if you're St. Louis, who would you throw on?
How tall is Johns? I'm sorry, real quick.
6'8".
6'8".
Hargrove. Pick it.
Well, yeah, I guess
are you lining up? Are you generally lining up Johns at the 4 and Deloach at the 5, or vice versa?
Kind of more so. Deloach plays 5. Deloach plays 5.
Yeah. So SLU is more of a 4 out, 1 in, right? Like it's either Okoro or Forrester, one or the other for 40 minutes, never both. And they're clearly our 5-man, right? Mm-hmm. Other than that, we really don't, like Zach was saying earlier, we don't have a true 4. We have a couple undersized guys kind of filling in as a 4. There have been games throughout the year where if we've gotten torched, a lot of times it's been a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", and a little stronger, right? Somebody who can kind of throw a body at an undersized 4, or in even worse, like some of those guys who can kind of step out and shoot too. We've really been hurt by that 4 position a lot this year. So I think a team that with Johns and Deloach, you could kind of throw some different looks at SLU and probably give us some trouble down there.
Yeah, you mentioned him. You mentioned him, being turnover prone. And whenever I hear a big being turnover prone, I think let's put an undersized guy on him with quicker hands and see if we can't force that guy to turn the ball over before he even gets a chance to shoot it. So, that's what I would do. I would go Hargrove or Pickett, both guys that I think have those quick hands and also can guard in the post. And Pickett is an absolute Mack truck he's like a Sprinter van. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's maybe the best comparison. Pete, I don't you talk about like a big guy being a Mack truck, but what would Pickett be? He'd be kind of like he's Jordan Goodwin, essentially light, I think.
He's a few inches taller, right? He's 6'5", 6'6", and he's kind of beefy. He's not the most athletic guy. He played at Mizzou for 4 years, and is a grad transfer at SLU. And the Mizzou teams he was on weren't very good. I think in the
No.
SEC, he kind of struggled a lot against more athletic, longer players. So he's an odd player. He's a good basketball player who I don't think is a great athlete. But he's got some kind of I guess underrated brawn to him, right? Like he's got a decent frame. He's fearless at least, So these are kind of interesting matchups to me. I don't know. I don't quite know how I see this shaking out, but I'm a little nervous whenever somebody can really put out a consistent 4 and 5 together against us. So Zach's right. It's going to have to be Hargrove or Pickett.
What does this game look like for VCU if you're sitting back the last 10 minutes with your popcorn, like you're happy with the way VCU has performed in this game? What's it look like?
Great question. So a St. Louis native, one of our starters now, Nick Kern, sophomore from, I don't know what high school in St. Louis, but he's from St. Louis.
Yeah, okay. Vashon. It's just over a mile from SLU's campus.
Okay. So Kern is someone who, as a freshman last year, played well. He can't shoot. He hasn't attempted a three in conference play this year. Can't shoot, but he showed signs early last year, like in November when Ace Baldwin wasn't playing because we needed just guys to play, and other teams didn't have a lot of tape on him. Kind of fizzled out in conference play, and in this year, if you listen to one of our maybe our 4th or 5th episode, it was from November, we kind of mentioned, and I'm sure you guys have had instances before where it's early in the season, you're like, hey, there's 2 or 3 guys. They're either going to get 15 minutes a game in A-Temp or in conference play, or they're going to get 3 minutes of run a game, and they're going to transfer them to the year. There's usually a few guys you're like, it's early in the season, you're like, will they be rotational players by conference play? So he's someone I look at, and in conference play, it was the night before we played Loyola Chicago. This is our we beat Davidson our 3rd game. So we were 2-1. We played at Loyola Chicago. And he started that night. Apparently, Coach Rhodes more or less said, hey, we are not going to start Jameer Watkins tonight. We're going to start Nick Kern instead because Watkins was kind of struggling from threes for the most part. And we started Kern that night. And Kern is someone who he has long strides. He can get from free throw line to free throw line in a second. He just runs. I bring that up. He's a St. Louis native, and it's just kind of fun. You have a Richmond native, Gibson Jimerson's from Richmond, so it's kind of fun to see guys across the country or halfway across the country playing at another school in the conference. But if it's the second half, 10 minutes to go, VCU is not up by a lot, but VCU is up by 4 or 5, and it just feels right. It's because Nick Kearns had 3 wide open dunks, meaning he either got out in transition, Ace Baldwin threw a bounce pass to him, Kern took one dribble and galloped to the rim, or he camped out on the baseline multiple times throughout the night and got a backdoor cut for a wide open layup or wide open dunk. And I bring that up is because that didn't happen last night against St. Bonaventure. I think he had 1 layup in the first half, but I don't know if Coach Schmidt just focused on him for the most part. But Kern never really got going last night. He had 1 bucket. So playing downhill is the most important thing. And I bring up Kern because he's someone who isn't – everyone knows who Ace Baldwin is. Everyone in A-Temp knows who Shriver is now because he's shooting 56% from 3 right now. But Kern's a guy who's he's a starter right now, but he's not a leading scorer. But him playing downhill puts me in a better feeling. It makes me feel like we're about to win a basketball game.
I want to ask about how this VCU team stacks up defensively compared to, historical VCU teams that we're, more familiar with. From the looks of it, just kind of looking through your schedule here, a lot more inconsistent maybe in terms of the number I'm seeing that you guys are allowing in a given game. I feel like last year, maybe the year before, there were a lot of times where VCU was like regularly holding teams to under 60, under 50 in a game, maybe not scoring that much. You guys maybe score a little bit more this season, but what can you tell us about VCU's defense this year?
So good question. Prior to this season, so not counting Rhodes' first season, 2017, 2018, but years 2 through 5, 3 of those 4 years, VCU was ended top 15 in the nation in Ken Palm defense. I think 2018-19 it was number 7. 2021, 2 years ago, was 14, and last year was number 7 or 8. So it's true. I think they're in the 20s right now, 25, 26, but we were in the 50s like in November and December. So it's a valid question. Good defense still, but not lockdown. I mentioned earlier we gave up 83 points to Temple because we just let them shoot wide up at threes the whole game. Jacksonville scored 73 on us because they got offensive. I think they out-rebounded us by 11 that night and just got putbacks. So you mentioned that, and Hassan Ward, you're SLU fans, you've dealt with players before that just, even if they were talented, you never felt like they were the right fit. Hassan Ward was not a scorer for us last year, but he was still one of the best shot blockers in the conference, outside of Ashunahi. He's probably the best. Him leaving, and then Vince Williams, who was first team All-A-10 last year, first team All-Defensive team, 2 guys that, one being a big guy, Hassan Ward, the other one, Vince Williams, who could play the 4. We knew our interior defense was not going to be as strong coming into the season. And that's probably been the most notable thing is big opponents having time to score on us. Jalen Deloche not being in foul, he was in foul trouble early on in the year. One of my co-hosts, Caleb Jones, he's our stat guy. And one of the stats he focuses on all year is fouls per 40 for Jalen Deloche. And it was really bad in November. I mean, I'm talking, he was getting 3 or 4 fouls a game, but playing like 18 minutes because he was in foul trouble. So that's one thing is his foul trouble didn't help us early on in the year. Now he's gotten a lot better at it. He fouled out against George Mason on Wednesday, but we won that game by 20, so that wasn't an issue. So interior defense specifically has been an issue. It's gotten better as conference play started. The perimeter defense hasn't been too much of an issue. Ace Baldwin's going to get steals every night. Jaden Nunn's going to get steals all night. I mentioned Nick Kern's one who gets a lot of steals. Jalen Deloche, for a big guy, gets steals. So we're still top 10 or top 15% in the nation in steal percentage. But I would say interior defense has been the one downfall.
How much pressing are you guys doing? Obviously, we don't have McCall, Mitchell, and Jet back there protecting the ball anymore. It's kind of the Yuri Collins show. So obviously, Billiken fans, pressing has been a concern.
I would say we press this isn't Shaka 2014 press.
You can't. Nobody does that.
Yeah,
except Shaka.
There's some conspiracies that we foul a lot when we do the press, but that's all BS from my point of view. But that's my opinion. That's my opinion. We still press a fair amount. It's almost in more of a zone kind of setup. I mean, you still have whoever's playing point guard will always have. There's going to be. The guard's always going to be on him. Ace Baldwin's going to be on Yuri Collins most of the night. One other guy you mentioned specific players or whatnot. Zeb Jackson is a Michigan transfer. So he played 2 years at Michigan, this is where I kind of misused my language earlier with Brandon Johns Jr. Zeb Jackson played 2 years at Michigan. He was a Beeline recruit as a junior. He committed to John Beeline. Senior year, John Beeline leaves, senior of high school, and Howard comes in. But he played for Howard for 2 years. Had a case of mono 2 years ago, never played, and I think he broke his hand last year. So he pretty much never played in 2 years. So he's kind of a sophomore for us this year, maybe a freshman if things work out. And he's 2021. But he's someone who comes off the bench and has a lot of energy, is an incredibly good athlete. His only problem is I think I have a better 3-point looking shot than he does. It's kind of funky. He was the number 60 overall recruit 3 years ago. It's kind of frustrating. But he's someone who can, because he's bouncy. He can play at the middle, at like mid court on the press. So he's someone SLU fans watch. I mentioned guys earlier about getting playing time. He could play 8 minutes Friday night. He could play 18 off the bench and have 4 steals. Kind of just depends. We still press a fair amount. It's not 2014 press. Yuri's such a good point guard. I mean, he's like any player. He can turn the ball over some. The only catch I would say is who helps him out on it. If we press, who helps him out? So I feel like that's kind of maybe a question you're almost kind of, you mentioned it's the Yuri Collins show. Who, if he's getting trapped 30 feet from the bat or 10 feet from the midcourt line, who's helping him out?
It's kind of by committee.
Yeah, I mean Perkins, Pickett. Jimerson. I actually really like Jimerson on the ball lately. I don't know why he doesn't get it a lot on, like in the backcourt per se. Yeah, Pete, it's kind of committee, right?
Lately, it seems like Pickett has been trying to. I mean, Pickett did this thing. What was that? What George Washington? No.
Yeah, the drive.
Yeah,
The 3-pointer at halftime.
It was George Washington. So he kept getting the ball because that was the game Uri was out, right?
Yeah,
he was sick that game, wasn't he?
And we were up by a little bit, and Pickett kept calling for the ball to beat the press, right? So they were fouling him and putting him on the free throw line. I think he wound up going 9 of 11 and made basically all of them down the stretch. So it seems like he's the guy who wants to get it late with a lead and maybe a team that hasn't been pressing us all day is trying to get fouled.
Yeah.
But we for a team that's pressing us the entire time, it really is a committee. It's not like I don't have a lot of confidence in a secondary ball handler. We do have a freshman, Larry Hughes Jr.
You might have heard that name
as more of a.
I grew up in Virginia. I mean, watching Wizards games as a kid. Of course, I know Larry Hughes. Is he a walk-on? Or
he technically is? Yeah,
yes, technically.
He's like kind of a wiry 6'6" freshman, but has shown veteran poise. Right? I mean, like he's got a 3-point shot. He plays kind of a cool, confident game. Inconsistent minutes, like sometimes you'll see him for 15 minutes, sometimes you'll see him for 3 to 5, but he's a guy who I think can kind of emerge really as that secondary ball handler, but it really is all about Uri at this point. We have seen a few games where teams have thrown more pressure at him, both in the backcourt and then, trapping him or just not letting him get in as deep into the offense. And it's gotten to him, it definitely has. And without that sort of obvious secondary ball handler, without better ball handlers overall in our guard position, that to me, is what I fear in this kind of game. Like if they get to Uri, if the pressure gets to him, that could be a problem. The other thing that he can kind of fall into, especially in a game like this where there's the marquee matchup between point guards, right? Of course, 2 guys who both think they're the best point guard in the A10. Uri can kind of get into this mentality where he tries to score too much, right? Like he doesn't. He's best off scoring the ball when he kind of just lets it come to him. When he tries to force things, it can get ugly, and you'll see him drive and get blocked drive after drive.
I think one of the best things that's happened to this team was that Uri Collins was sick for that GW game. Because as Pete said, he said, Uri Collins gets in the mode where he tries to score too much, but he also gets in this mode where he's got to be the guy that makes the last pass. And It's not out of stat hunting. It's more like, I can do this. This is how I help the team. But in reality, when you do that a little too much, it becomes predictable and everybody knows that when you have the ball in your hand, you're going to most likely give it up. And so play everybody straight up and hope that Uri can't beat you off the dribble or by a shot. Now, since that game, we watched, Perkins be able to cook with the ball in his hand. Pickett was serviceable. Jimerson had 7 assists in a game. He led the team in assists, somebody other than Uri Collins, and it was Gibson Jimerson. So this team has really been emboldened to be playmakers and help Uri be a playmaker.
We've added a couple wrinkles to the offense too that facilitates that makes that happen. So it's been interesting to watch, but I still don't have a ton of confidence in a team that's going to put this much pressure on us.
I agree. It scares the shit out of me.
I look at the game last year. So the BC and SLU as a matchup is kind of interesting because we've only played once a year, pretty much every year since I think Wade's first year, 15-16. We played twice. I think we played once a year since then. And like last year, we played the very last game of the year. It was the one game I didn't watch fully because I had my girlfriend, now fiance, we kind of had something going on that day. So I couldn't really watch it. And that was a game I think SLU about like 16 or 17, and we came back and cut it to 1 late.
That sounds right.
It was the last game of the year. If we would have won, we would have actually been tied for first and would have been the 1 seed, but that's a different conversation. And then 2 years ago was the COVID year. We played at Siegel Center 1 game, and TV Ted gave us a little assist that night on a last second foul call. The right call.
No, sir.
Yeah.
Well,
he was covering our game, George Mason game Wednesday at him TV10. I always think of the Yuri. I think it was Yuri Collins who fouled Ace that night, right?
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, it was like in February. It was towards the end of the year.
yeah, I was at an indoor soccer game watching. I watched that right before my indoor game, so I remember that way too well.
But I mentioned this. We just haven't played St. Louis a lot, so they're the one team. We play Dayton twice every year. They're the one team I feel like at times I don't know them for how they've pretty much been the top 5 or 6 teams since 2018, 2019. They're still a team. I watch most of their games because if it's not summertime, I'm not watching the Cubs.
You're a sicko like us.
I watch basketball all day long. Saturday, my fiance had something going on, and I just literally watched basketball from like 12 to 4:30. Went to a little pregame, watched BCU lose, and came back and watched Gonzaga play at like 9 o'clock. That is the one you mentioned. Is it Pickett? Is it Jimerson? Who else is going to guard if Collins is getting double teamed and whatnot in the backcourt? I'm intrigued to see what happens.
Connor, appreciate you coming on. Let our fans know where they can find your guys' work.
So mentioned earlier, so at Black Gold Fan Pod, that's on Twitter, Instagram. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, all that memorabilia and whatnot. We're pretty new. I'm one of the hosts, Connor Bailey. My main host is Adam Epstein, and Caleb Jones and Chris Mason are my co-hosts. Give us a follow. There's a few podcasters out there from VCU, but I'll be honest, we're the best. We're the best. We we don't sugarcoat things. We had to sugarcoat some things back in November when it didn't look too good right then. But we're playing a lot better basketball right now. But give us a follow, give us a listen. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man. Let us know if you'd like us to come on the show, and I'm sure if it works out for our schedule, we'll be happy to join, man. And you are my second least favorite black and gold team, so congratulations on that.
I've heard that joke a couple times, and I'll take what I can get from you guys.
Yeah. Hey, Connor, thank you again, and have a good evening, and good luck this week up until Friday.
Appreciate it, fellas. See y'all Friday.
Thanks, Connor.
Take it easy. Pete, it's time for the trivia question of the week. Thank you to Connor Bailey for joining us and giving us some insight into the VCU Rams. Friday 10 coming up, 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Friday, that is the 3rd of February. So excited for that. But let's talk trivia. Last week's question, Pete, go ahead. And it was your question. I'll let you read it.
So Francis Okoro registered the 17th 20 rebound game in SLU men's basketball program history. How many players combined for those other 16? I'm not asking who all 16 of them were, but how many different players represent those 16? It's 10 different players. The number that really jumps out here is number 1, Jerry Cook or Koch, K-O-C-H.
It's Coke.
38 rebounds in a game. And then the crazy thing is, you think a guy who does that is just a rebound machine. He never had 20 in another game. So he's number 1, and then he doesn't appear on the list again. But the other 9 guys are Bob Norman, Hassan French, easy one for young, more recent fans. Rich Parks, Eugene Moore, Bob Cole, Anthony Bonner, Carl Johnson, Mike Lockett, Rich Neiman. You didn't need to name everybody, but it was kind of a tough one because there are a lot of those rebounding numbers are pretty old. A lot of those come from the 50s and 60s, and for younger fans, it's just not a lot of names that they know. Just a few. I think West Pine Bills were the first to get this one, Zach, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I guess we'll give it to them.
Yeah, begrudgingly, I guess.
They weren't happy about last week.
No, but we'll shout them out this time. So good job. You guys had the right number. This week's question, Zach, has to do with one of our opponents this week.
Yeah, SLU played Fordham exactly one time before joining the A10 back in 1972. Where was this game held?
Yeah, so this one was inspired by kind of going and looking back at the Fordham series history, because I was curious. I don't really have a lot of memory of us losing to Fordham, and I looked at our all-time A10 record against them, our head to head with Fordham. And we've been really good against Fordham. We're 15-3 overall. We've only lost to them 3 times since joining this league. One right before Soderberg was let go, and then we lost to them again in 2015 and 2017. But 2 odd things, Zach, that stuck out to me about this series: we've never played a home and home with Fordham. So since joining the league, they've never been one of our home and homes, and we've never run into them in the conference tournament. Which I thought was really odd. You would think that at least once or twice we would.
I would think the Cruz years would be one of them. The post, you know what I mean? When we were in the pillow fight.
How did we dodge them in the pillow fight? But somehow we did. So yeah, Fordham has just been, no matter what, since joining the A10, we've only played them 1 time a season, which was really odd. So yeah.
I need to apologize to our followers a little bit. We put out a question and I said we'd talk about it on the episode. But we that was when we didn't have a VCU podcaster to talk to, and that came about kind of late in the game. So I'm just going to run through a couple of these what ifs just to give you the questions, what people came up with. So we asked, what is the biggest what if in Billiken basketball history? What if the 2020 team didn't have a COVID shutdown? What if Majerus stays healthy? And then, for how long? What if the AD doesn't hold on to Cruz? So there's 2 different times. There's prior to the not making him interim, and then changing coaches after that NCAA tournament. So that's one of them. What if Craig Upchurch had been admitted to SLU? What if Tatum chose SLU over Duke? What if Larry Hughes stays? What if the Billikens avoid what have now been called situation 1 and 2 scandals? So those are some really good ones. Obviously we've got this episode is going to be around 2 hours. So we're going to put that aside. We might do that as a separate little YouTube video mini-sode.
But those are all great questions. And we're gonna go deep on that one. We're gonna go deep on it. We just
so much fun.
Just not now.
Yeah. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Women's basketball. What an interesting week for Tillett and her squad.
It really was. And it started with hoping that we could get some of the positive vibes into Belk Arena for the men's team, who's never won there, by maybe having the women's team pick off a win there on Wednesday, the 25th. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. They wound up losing by force, 75-71, in a game that honestly could have gone either way, Zach.
Yeah, SLU led 21-16 after the first, and Davidson scored the first 5 to tie it in the second. This was, look, SLU cooked in that first quarter. And then after that, it was just like, well, Davidson's back in the game. Here we go. It's going to be a coin flip the rest of the way. Seems like every game has been a coin flip for this team.
It really has. It really has. They traded leads for a while. So SLU takes a 4-point lead into half. And then the third quarter, they grew it to as much as 10. But then Davidson closed out that quarter strong and was up 1 going into the fourth. They traded leads again for a while in the fourth quarter. The last 6 minutes, unfortunately, you just wind up with too many turnovers and misses by SLU. This was a coin flip game, and they just didn't execute in the end. And Davidson did. I think the way Tillett put it was that that they made progress, but Davidson hit some big shots in this one. Davidson got 47 points out of 2 players. Ellie Sutphin, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, had 25 with 11 rebounds and 4 blocks. And then Susie Rose Deegan had 22 and 5. So it really was a 2-person team for them. But kind of a bright note here, Zach, Brooke Flowers, we've talked about her offense before and how it's never really come around, but this week it really did. Career high 24 points at Davidson with 5 rebounds and a block. She's made that offense more of a focus lately, and she goes 11 for 14 in this one.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with what she's brought to the table in the last 2 games. It's one of those things where it seems that maybe either they're putting her in the right position or she's just, I don't know, figured it out herself. But really happy to see her turn it on. And it's something that this team has sorely missed.
Yeah, for sure. And she also this week was named the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year watch list. So we'll be keeping an eye on that award as well. Julia Martinez, 19, 6 and 6 with 2 steals and a block, 9 of 16 from the field. Huge game for her. McMakin and Nicastro both had 10 in this one, but it took McMakin 16 field goal attempts to get there and only 7 for Nicastro. The cool thing is, though, McMakin reached the 2,000 point mark and is one of 10 active players now with over 2,000. She also got her 500th career rebound. It's crazy to think that she's going to probably be back for another season, already sitting on over 2,000 points.
Yeah. I mean, she gets buckets, just not efficiently all the time.
Right.
Tough game for Calhoun in this one, Pete.
4 points, 4 assists, 7 turnovers. Just not her night. Slew had 7 more fouls than Davidson. I think the men would experience how the officiating works for the Davidson Wildcats as well. They had a couple at the end, as they're trying to keep it close, but it's a notable disparity nonetheless. Speaking of disparities, they were on the wrong side of a 7 turnover one as well. They had 20 to Davidson's 13. So it's kind of a common theme for both the men and the women there this week. Lost the foul battle, lost the turnover battle, let their opponent have a lot more field goal attempts. So they just have to be that much better shooting the ball. And, if they play a cleaner game here, they probably win this one with not just by a couple, but relatively comfortably. So I'm kind of ashamed to let this one get away. But the bright note coming out of this one, that's 2 close road losses in a row. And I think it kind of is setting the table for them to come back at home and play a better game, Zach, against Fordham. This is now 4 games in a row that have been very competitive for this team, and they've pulled out wins in 2 of them.
Yeah, you pull out an 87-84 win versus Fordham. I mean, this is a good win. This is a program building. This is something you build off of.
Fordham has been historically one of the better teams in this conference, and I know they've had some issues with coaching, a coaching change recently, but nevertheless, this has been frequently an NCAA tournament team. They've been one of the top 2 teams in conference in recent years, and they're clearly a top half team this year, if not quite sure, whether they're the 3rd or 5th best or whatever team. But this is a big one. Slew got out to a really hot start, 29 in the first quarter, but then they had their problem quarter, as they have a lot this season, and allowed Fordham to score 31 in that third quarter. So Fordham took a 4-point lead into the fourth. So, it feels like there's always that one quarter,
Yeah, it really is frustrating. I mean, again, it's one of those things. Is it really just the quarter, or is it, us being close and watching it constantly? Really, really liked, you mentioned Ken Calhoun in the last one, and she's been fantastic, man. Like, I think she's been a huge bright spot on this team besides Mia Nicastro.
She's been a lot better lately overall. I don't know if necessarily this week was her best week, but I think her trend line over the season's been a lot better. In this game, it was not so much Calhoun as Peyton Kennedy coming off the bench and giving you 17 points and 5 rebounds in 27 minutes. Good performance from her. And really, as McMakin goes, so goes Slew. McMakin ends up playing all 40 minutes here and scoring 33 on 11 of 20 shooting. Clearly one of her best performances of the year. Slew, like I said, went into the fourth quarter down 4, but they tied it with just under 6 minutes left on a McMakin jumper. She winds up scoring the next 4 points of the game, and then Peyton Kennedy, a fast break layup, and Slew's up 6. They take an 8-point lead into the final minute. Fordham steals the ball and winds up tying it with 21 seconds left, just a little bit of sloppiness at the end. Then they wind up fouling McMakin at midcourt. She makes her free throws. Fordham misses back-to-back threes fouls her again, and she makes one more to put this one away. So SLU was probably feeling like they had this one wrapped up, and then, the turnover bug returned. So as good as McMakin was in this one, Martinez had a really rough shooting night, 2 of 17 for the field. But Zach, Julia Martinez being Julia Martinez, she adds 12 rebounds, 13 assists, and 5 steals. Had she shot, all she needed to do was go 6 of 17, and she's got a triple-double in this one. I kind of feel like she's going to do it sooner or later, though.
Yeah, Martinez has been just unbelievable. I mean, it's a complete renaissance of her game this season. It's somebody called it a Conklin summer, and I don't see what I don't see a I don't see a lie there.
No, she's been great. She's kind of the engine that powers this team. As much as McMakin's the one who's trying to do the scoring, Martinez does everything else. But you had another big scoring night here for Flowers. Finishes with 23 and 10. That's she's coming off a 24-point career high, 23. That's her second best night ever. And then, like I said, Kennedy's got 17 points off the bench. So SLU got 17 of 87 points from 3 players. Between Flowers, Kennedy, and McMakin in this one. This result, Zach, is what happens when this team shoots well. We talked to Colin Surrey about this before, and it really just comes down to being more efficient with shooting the ball. Yes, they turned it over too much again in this one. Yes, there are some things to clean up, but they played at a really good pace. They scored 50 in the paint and took down what's normally one of the best teams in this league. So I think overall this is a great game. The only thing I'm kind of worried about, it looked like Camry Clegg went down with an injury. I haven't heard anything on her status yet, so I don't know what the future holds for her.
Next up for the women's basketball team is George Mason on Wednesday. That's a team that is up and down. Some seasons they'll be very, very good. Some seasons not so much. That's on February 1st. And then at Bonaventure on Sunday the 5th, as we know. Traveling to Bonaventure is not a fun experience. Swimming and diving.
But luckily that Bonaventure team is in dead last place.
Oh,
right
they
now,
are
so.
horrific.
Yeah. So maybe even if it takes planes, trains, and automobiles, they can pull one out up in Western New York.
Mid-season firing too in Bonaventure.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
On the swimming and diving side, senior day versus Maryville, Saturday 28th. Men won 174 to 25, and the women won 176 to 44. By the way, Pete, had a great time meeting a couple of the swim and dive alum at Humphreys. As I said, I went out to celebrate the Belk curse being lifted. And I had no better place to do it the next night because I couldn't go out Friday night than Humphreys on Saturday night, and got to meet Brooks Maupin, good guy. Actually, funny story. So I was like, dude, I need a SLU swim cap. And they're like, oh yeah, I can get you one. And so I went into the bathroom, and as I'm in the bathroom, another guy's on the phone with somebody, and he's telling hey, could you bring up a swim cap to Humphreys? I'm like, I think that's for me. But it was just so funny. But I think the funniest part was, they gave it to me, and we're sitting at the bar, and I go to they hadn't even walked away or anything. I went to try it on, and this will happen with older swim caps. It just split right in half, and it was the dumbest thing that's ever happened. But so cool of them to hook me up with one of those anyway. And I think I'll put half of it on the wall back here, just add to the wall of stuff.
Yeah.
Run
Nice.
down the track and field results, Pete.
Yeah, and before I do that, I want to let people know that swimming and diving, they have the A10 championships coming up on the 15th, February 15th to 18th in Geneva, Ohio. I believe that's the Spire Institute or Spire Academy, kind of the sports prep school up there. And also, if anybody from the athletic department's listening, I wish you would have listed the seniors who were celebrated on senior day in swimming. The challenge for us right now, normally on senior day, it would be very obvious looking at the roster and saying okay, yeah, these are the people who are leaving, but there are a lot of people exercising in 5th year. So I don't know for sure who's staying and going. Track and field was spread across 2 events this weekend. The team saw numerous personal records and even a few program records fall. Most of them were at the Indiana relays. most of the team anyway. Toby Gillen broke his own 3,000 meter school record, finishing 5th overall there with a time of 8:01.78. We had a couple other school records fall at the Illini Challenge up in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois. James Baker set a new school record in heptathlon with a score of 44.96. He also ran a personal record in the 1,000 meter. And then Maddie Pearson broke the SLU pentathlon record with a score of 32.93. So those are the 3 school records to fall. And, like I said, there's a lot of personal records too over the weekend for track and field. So if you want to see all of those, you should follow John Bell, the track and field coach, on Twitter. I believe he's JBell30, right, Zach?
Yeah.
JBell30. So go follow him and you'll see all the PRs in there. Next up, they've got the Iowa State Classic on February 3rd and 4th in Ames, Iowa.
That wraps up the week in Billiken Athletics. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod. At Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP, and on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. Speaking of social media, thanks to everyone who interacted with our Twitter this week. I mean, we probably had the most interactions that we've had since we started the account, just on the baseball tweet. And then on, what else was there? There was the what if tweet. So really appreciate everybody getting, and every time those things take off, our Twitter follows grow by 10. It's crazy. Anyway, that's it for our show. We appreciate any and all suggestions you might have for the show. Go subscribe if you haven't yet. If you haven't left a review, you can do that as well. Let's drop 5 stars. As always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.
And there's no such thing as curse.